Hello and welcome to Slide Into Sports live on 103.1 FM radio WVLP. I'm your host, Ryan Schleier, and what a crazy weekend of college football it was, and there was also some interesting college basketball games going on as well. This is now the start of college basketball season in addition to college football, so we're going to be doing some double coverage. We're going to be expanding, the sports that we're covering from 1 to 2 for right now, at least until college football season is over. Maybe 3, depending on what goes on with swimming. But right now, let's just go right into some college basketball first, just because there's a couple of important games I think that were in need of being covered. So let's just start off with Kansas and North Carolina. One of the ranked matchups that happened on Friday, November 7th. North Carolina ended up winning 87-74. It was classic battle of the Blue Bloods. Kansas, they started off really taking control in the beginning of the game. They were up 37-29 at half, and they put up 37 points in the second half. And just looking at that alone, you think, oh, Kansas probably locked this game up, right? But no, they gave up 58 points to North Carolina in the second half, which gave North Carolina the game. That was pretty crazy. What a dominant second half of basketball from North Carolina. Also on Saturday, there was Arkansas versus Michigan State. Arkansas, they traveled to Michigan State to play. They were ranked 14th. Michigan State was ranked 22nd. And Michigan State barely edging out the Razorbacks 69-66. Arkansas, they had the lead at the end of the first half. They were up 39-36. But then Michigan State, they were able to hold Arkansas to 27 points and were able to put up 33 points, giving themselves the edge. Michigan State, they were 41% from the field and only 7% from the three-point range. So Michigan State was 1 for 14 behind the three-point line. Arkansas, more efficient behind the three-point line. They were at 25%, but they weren't nearly as efficient as Michigan State was in the field. They were at 39.3%. So they were about even there. The key here was the turnovers. Both teams were just turning over the ball like crazy. They both turned over the ball 14 times. Arkansas had 11 steals. Michigan State had 7. Arkansas had 6 blocks. Michigan State had 5. Arkansas, they had a lot more fouls, though. They had 21 fouls in comparison to Michigan State's 15 fouls. So Michigan State able to get those points from the free throw line, which they were shooting 69.2% from 18 for 26. So that is what ended up giving Michigan State the win there. Looking ahead for college basketball, we have and this is kind of a loaded Tuesday for college basketball this early in the season. You've got Kentucky versus Louisville, and right now Kentucky is ranked number 9 and Louisville is ranked number 11th. That's at 7 p.m. Central Time this Tuesday. That's in-state rivalry right there. 2 historied programs in college basketball going head-to-head. At this point, at this early part of the season, is kind of a blessing for us viewers. You've also got Texas Tech versus Illinois, number 10 Texas Tech, and Illinois is number 17. They're going head-to-head in a ranked matchup at 7:30 p.m. Central Time. And then you've got Creighton versus Gonzaga. Creighton's ranked number 23, and Gonzaga's ranked number 21. That is at 9 p.m. So a few really good college basketball ranked matchups coming up ahead this week. There's also Purdue versus Alabama on Thursday at 6 p.m. And there is a couple of games on Saturday. You've got number 8 BYU versus number 4 UConn. So just quick little dip into college basketball for the year. I mean, this is literally the very start of the season. Indiana beat, I guess just kind of going into Indiana basketball, Indiana beat Marquette on Sunday, and they dropped 100 points on Marquette. It was very dominant performance. Indiana just was shooting like crazy along the outside. Like they were nailing pretty much every single 3-point shot that they had. They put up 56 points in the first half. Marquette put up 38, and Indiana just kept the dominance going, putting up 44 points in the second half to Marquette's 39. So it was a pretty good defensive effort from Indiana as well. They were 50% from the field and from the three-point line, and they were 83.3% from behind the free throw line. Not three, but free, as in free things. Marquette, not nearly as efficient as the Hoosiers, except they were slightly more efficient behind the free throw line. They were 87.9% behind the free throw line, but they were only 25% efficient from the three-point line. They were 4 for 16 there, and 37.3% in the field. So Indiana just completely dominant game for the Hoosiers. I mean, what a statement win for them. We might see Indiana ranked, possibly, but we shall see. Okay, so kind of pivoting into college football right now, kind of want to break down the first college football playoff rankings because I didn't get the chance to do that last week because they came out on Tuesday instead of on Monday. So, we're going to just, I guess, look at the college football playoff rankings from last week and try to predict what could happen in the college football playoff rankings this week because there was some carnage in college football that happened. I mean, not so much from 1 through 6. I mean, Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M, Alabama, Georgia, and Ole Miss, they stay winning. They kept winning. Indiana escaped Penn State. It was a very, very close game. But Indiana, Fernando Mendoza, they had a legacy drive down the field with an Omar Cooper catch at the very end, which pretty much summed up the whole game because it was a game of inches and centimeters. That catch that Omar Cooper Jr. made, probably catch of the year. That might have been the best catch of the year. Maybe all time. And I might be over-exaggerating a little bit, but damn, that was a good catch. BYU, they were ranked 7th. They got blown out by Texas Tech, so I'm curious to see what they do, what the committee does with BYU, since they had Utah at 13 in last week's rankings. And BYU has that head-to-head over Utah and still has the better record than Utah as well. So are we going to, even though BYU got destroyed by Tech, are we going to see BYU fall below Utah? Or are we going to see them, just drop a couple of places, like maybe 12th? Maybe they just go right in front of Utah to respect the head-to-head. Oregon, they escape with the win against Iowa. They traveled to Kinnick Stadium. Super, super rainy game in the beginning. And Oregon, that safety they got in the beginning ended up helping them. Because if they didn't get that safety, then that game would have been tied. And that game could have been tied if Iowa had succeeded in converting on those 2 points at the very end. But just like the opposite of Indiana, really, it was inches away from being successful. And I think it probably could have gotten called a successful 2-point conversion, but there was a rain droplet on the camera that had the best view. Like, it was literally right by where the catch was, and there was a rain droplet right where the player's foot was going to land, like right where the line was. So you couldn't really see where the foot landed. But other angles showed that they didn't get it. He was wearing black cleats. The ground in the end zone was black. So it's really hard to tell where his foot landed. but the officials, they overturned the call and they deemed it an unsuccessful 2-point conversion attempt. Notre Dame, they also win. They beat Navy at home. They blew them out. Texas and Oklahoma, they didn't play this weekend. Texas, they've got a big game against Georgia this weekend. Oklahoma, they've got a big game against Alabama. If Texas and Oklahoma win those games, that is going to change the whole picture for the playoffs. Just because Georgia is now going to be a 2-loss team. Alabama would also be a 2-loss team. So there'd be a lot of 2-loss SEC teams besides Texas A&M. So it's going to be really interesting to look at. And if that does happen, if Texas and Oklahoma were able to pull out victories in both of those games, and they need to, I think they are going to need to if they want to stay in the playoff picture, because we saw last year there was some 3-loss SEC teams that were arguing that they should be in. Alabama and South Carolina, 2 of those teams that come to mind. And the committee said no. This year, though, they're factoring in more strength of schedule, but they're also still factoring in the strength of record, being, like an 8-1 team is better than a 7-1 team, but that depends on the strength of schedule, which is why, like, Oregon, even though they're 7-1, just like Alabama and Georgia is, because of their strength of schedule, or at least strength of the wins that they have, they were moved down to 9th last week. So after the win against Iowa, though, I could see Oregon jumping up a couple of spots. And since BYU is in front of them, they're guaranteed to jump at least 1 spot. Utah, they were at 13th last week. They didn't play, so they're probably just going to keep Utah behind Texas and Oklahoma, wherever Texas and Oklahoma end up. The committee has no reason to move Utah from 13 right now. I'm surprised they had Utah that high, but I'm glad they're showing respect to more than just the Big Ten and the SEC. The Big 12 is, like, they're a solid conference this year. It's not like the Wild Wild West ACC, which is what the ACC seems to be right now. After number 14 Virginia and number 15 Louisville both lose their games, which completely shifts what the ACC conference championship picture is going to look like. Now Georgia Tech is kind of back in that conversation after losing to NC State the week prior. Georgia Tech had a bye, but now Virginia, Louisville, or Virginia is a 1-loss team. Georgia Tech's a 1-loss team, so they're both probably going to the ACC championship unless Virginia or Georgia Tech lose another ACC game. Louisville, Miami, and Pitt, they are 2-loss ACC teams. Duke is as well, which Duke, I doubt they get to the ACC championship because their overall record is like 5-4 right now. It is not good. They lost to UConn on Saturday by 3 points. So, yeah, Duke is just all over the place. I wouldn't trust them at all. Vandy, they're at 16. They escaped Auburn at home. That game went to overtime, but Vandy, their offense can, turn it up quicker or more effectively than Auburn's offense can. So no surprise there that Vandy ended up winning in overtime, because when it comes down to it, like, you have to have a working offense when you're in overtime. Like, you have to score in those must-win situations. Auburn hasn't really shown that they can do that. Georgia Tech was at 17 last week. Talked about them already a little bit. I think Georgia Tech probably ends up moving up at least 3 spots. But really, the committee, they've already shown, like, having the top, like, the highest-ranked ACC team was 14th in Virginia. I am not sure if the committee is going to show more or any more respect to the ACC after this Saturday. I mean, seriously, it was just abysmal for the ACC. Probably worst case scenario just for the conference as a whole. Miami, they ended up being at 18th. The only good thing, I think, at least within the ACC, is that Miami now has an opportunity to climb their way back to the ACC championship. They're now only one game away, like one game that separates them from getting to the ACC championship. So we'll see if someone else slips up. Virginia could slip up. We'll see. I mean, they play, I believe, Duke at some point this year. It might be this weekend. Yeah, it is this weekend, actually. Virginia plays Duke this weekend. Duke could just ball out and beat Virginia. So, yeah, that would be Miami's gateway in. The only thing, though, is Louisville. That's the other roadblock that Miami has. Because Louisville beat Miami head-to-head. So, Miami also needs Louisville to lose as well. So, but the way that both of those teams have looked in those games, it's looking like Miami could come back in. USC, they're at 19. They're probably going to move up some spots as well. They lit up Northwestern in the Coliseum on Friday night. Just great performance by USC, especially at the end. Like, they dominated Northwestern by the end of the game. I think really they just wore out the Wildcats, and Northwestern just could not keep up with USC's offense. I mean, Northwestern made it a fight for about a quarter and a half or a half. It was a fight for for the first half of the game, but USC ended up running away with that one. Iowa got ranked 20th by the CFP committee. I don't think they're going to drop them out. I mean, I think they probably put Iowa at 24 or 25. If they do drop them out, they're probably going to put in like South Florida or something, like an AAC team, most likely. Michigan, they're at 21. They had a bye week, so they couldn't do anything to move up or down, but they'll probably end up moving up a couple spots simply because teams above them lost. Missouri, they lost to Texas A&M. I anticipate they will probably be out of the rankings. Missouri, they have a third-string quarterback in right now, so their offense is just not there. And, I mean, if the committee has showed us anything, they do value the state of your roster. So, Missouri, probably out of the top 25. Really tough loss to Texas A&M at home, but, that's the name of the game in college football. You got to win your games. Washington, they come in at 23rd from at least last week, but they're definitely going to be out of the rankings now because they took a tough loss to Wisconsin in Madison. They lost 10-13. It seems like Jed Fish wants out of Washington. I think he probably goes back to Florida. I mean, from what I've heard and seen, it doesn't seem like he really likes it in Seattle. So don't be surprised if Jed Fish is the one that ends up going to the Florida Gators. Pittsburgh was at 24th. They're probably going to move up a couple of spots as well, simply because, teams above them lost. And Tennessee came in at 25th. I guess the committee just didn't know who to put at 25, so they were just like, screw it, let's put Tennessee. Because, to be fair, there's a decent amount of teams that probably could be in the 25 spot, but we're also at the point of the season where it's okay to have 3 losses to be in the top 25. Just don't have 3 losses and be in the top 12. Like, you can't be a 3-loss team in the top 12 at this point. Not yet. Definitely, no. Probably not ever, but I mean, it depends. We'll see. But that's kind of the breakdown of the college football playoff rankings. The EP poll that came out, and honestly, like, from what I saw in the AP poll, it seemed like they were almost copying what the CFP committee did last week and trying to factor in what happened this weekend or this past weekend. So we'll see what the CFP committee does. I mean, I don't think, at least on the top end of it, like teams 1 through 5, or even really 1 through 6, I don't think that's going to be any different. The only thing the major changes I'm thinking the CFP committee is going to have is from 7 to about 15 or 16. I think there's going to be a lot of movement there. You're going to see probably 2 to 3 teams, maybe even 4 new teams in the top, 16. We'll see. I mean, it really depends on what the committee does with BYU and what they end up doing with Virginia and Louisville. Because those 2 games, that kind of screws the ACC, low-key, because the ACC teams are going to start dropping out of the rankings. And then what happens when one of those ACC teams, that's not ranked at the end of the year, wins the ACC conference title? You could possibly see a group of 5 team get a higher spot than the ACC conference champion. South Florida could be the 11 seed, and the ACC conference champion could be the 12 seed, which is kind of a crazy thought, because initially when the college football playoffs were made, it was assumed that the Power 4 teams were going to be in the buys. They made it so that way the Power 4 conference champions get the buys. They got rid of that. So now it's just assumed that the Power 4 conference champions are going to at least have the first 4 auto bids in the top 12. This year, that might not even be the case, which is kind of a crazy thought, but it's real. It's a real possibility. It's a very real possibility. Okay, so now let's kind of get into some of the other games. I kind of briefly summarized some of them, like Indiana, Penn State, Texas A&M, Missouri. But here are some other ones that happened as well. We had Ohio State go into West Lafayette. They won 34-10. Weirdly low-scoring game for Ohio State, but I think Ohio State at this point is just trying to win their games. They don't really care by how much. They're just trying to get the victories. I think they're just they're not really going for the pizzazz, if you will. They're not going for the style points. They're more focused on just getting to the playoffs and getting to the national championship and winning. So, Ohio State, they are pretty much in the driver's seat, not only for the Big Ten championship, but I think also for the national championship. Depending on where you put them, they will make the national championship. They will. They probably will. And they will probably have an easier path than they did last year. That's another thing to consider as well. I just think, the way Ohio State's roster is built, the way that they're playing the games, the mentality they have right now, it just seems like Ohio State is the team to beat. They are this, Odom, the Purdue coach, said it best. Ohio State is the standard that everyone is chasing right now. Indiana, I think right now, is the closest to Ohio State standard. And I think if Indiana is either the 2 or 3 seed and Ohio State is the 1 seed and they're on the opposite side of the bracket, Indiana will make it to the national championship. That's how far ahead I think the Big Ten is at this point. At least the top end of the Big Ten is ahead of the other conferences. The top ends of the other conferences. That's just looking at it on the field, just from what I've seen, it really does look like the Big Ten has 1 or 2 teams that will win the national championship. Texas A&M, I think they're definitely next up. I think they're definitely the 3 seed. They're undefeated, and kind of like Indiana, for the most part, they've been just thrashing their opponents. They've just been dominating them. LSU, Texas A&M just dominated LSU. They dominated them. I mean, granted, they, had vengeance in mind, and LSU is also a rival of Texas A&M, but still, Texas A&M, made a statement in that game. Alabama, they're number 4. I think they're definitely the number 4 seed, and they beat LSU, but it was kind of more of a gritty defensive battle. And Alabama showed that, like, they're improving on defense. Like, they are improving on defense, and they are getting better and better as the season goes on, which is what you want in your team. Like, if you want your team to succeed in the postseason, you have to keep getting better. You don't want to plateau early. You want to make sure that you can keep improving and keep, like, getting better and keep showing that, you have multiple tricks in your sleeve that people may not have seen yet. That's kind of what Ohio State is doing. Kind of going more into the Virginia game, though, like, just to pivot. Virginia, they lose to Wake Forest, of all teams. Wake Forest is now 6-3, which is weird. It's really weird to think about, considering where they were last year, but they're 6-3. They almost beat Georgia Tech earlier this year. Some could argue they should have won that game. But, yeah, 6-3, Wake Forest is a weird thing to look at on a screen. But they had a really just more dominant quarter. I mean, I wouldn't say Wake Forest was dominating Virginia by any means, but Virginia did not control the game at any point. Virginia only scored 3 field goals. They didn't score a touchdown. It was only field goals. And it was 1 field goal in the first quarter, 1 field goal in the second quarter, and 1 field goal in the third quarter. Wake Forest, they had a dominating second quarter where they scored 10 points, and then in the second half they scored 6 points with a field goal in each quarter. So, like, Wake Forest essentially just outscored Virginia. That's it. Like, they didn't dominate them. They just outscored them. And against a team that doesn't really take care of the ball all that well, that's all you got to do. You just got to outscore them because they're going to be bound. They're going to be bound to make mistakes. They're going to make mistakes. That's just how it is. Okay. The other game, the ACC game, the downfall that happened, obviously, Louisville. Cal won 29-26 in a walk-off touchdown in overtime. It was pretty even in the first quarter. Louisville and Cal both trade off touchdowns. Then Cal had a more dominant second quarter. They scored 10 points. Louisville did score 6 points. So they had that. It wasn't like, Virginia, where it was like, oh, field goal. Then Cal scores 6 points in the third quarter, kind of solidifying their lead a little bit. Louisville scores a touchdown, keeps it close. Then Louisville gets a field goal in the fourth quarter to tie it up. Game goes to overtime. Louisville gets the ball first. Cal's defense forces Louisville to go for a field goal. Louisville makes the field goal. Then Cal drives down the field and gets a walk-off touchdown. They didn't even need the extra point. All they needed was the touchdown. They got it on 4th and goal. It was at like the 1-yard line when Cal did this touchdown. And they got it. And yeah, I think this game pretty much sums up Louisville a little bit, where they take sacks when they shouldn't. They make mistakes where they shouldn't. Like, they have moments where they're great, but there's just not enough of them. There's just not enough of those moments where, they're great. And that's what happens. At this point in the season, in November, November is probably the toughest month in college football for teams because it's the end of the season. It's month, 3, 3.5, 4, where you're just playing almost every weekend for 3 hours on Saturday, and the weather's changing. You've got daylight savings, time is changing, and players are just more worn out. It's just a lot tougher, and you're seeing that on display in these games. Again, Washington versus Wisconsin. It was a rainy game, but Wisconsin just toughed it out more than Washington did. Wisconsin toughed out Washington in that game. They out-toughed them, and they won. Like, that's pretty much it. Like, it was a very low-scoring game because normally Washington likes to sling the ball downfield, but you can't really sling the ball downfield when it's pouring rain. Another game that I kind of wanted to talk about before we preview college basketball games and college football games that are coming up, we've got Maryland versus Rutgers. And I know that that's not ranked, but I more so wanted to talk about it simply because Maryland, like, they looked good in the beginning of the season. They get a blowout win against Wisconsin versus Wisconsin. Like, they started off Big Ten play either 1-0 or 1-1, I believe. And now they're 4-4. Like, Maryland has lost either 3 or 4 games straight in Big Ten play. And in the beginning, Maryland was controlling the game against Rutgers. It was like they scored 7 points in the first quarter. Maryland was forcing Rutgers to turn the ball over in the second quarter. Maryland puts up 10 points in the second quarter. Rutgers puts up 21 points, though, in the second quarter and ends up leading at half. And then Rutgers puts up 14 points in the second half, and the defense holds Maryland to just a mere 3 points. Like, Maryland got blown out by Rutgers. Granted, it was on the road for Maryland, but still, like, Rutgers was one of those Big Ten teams where, like, they weren't very good. Like, they were getting blown out by other Big Ten opponents. Like, they were not seen as a good Big Ten team. Maryland kind of was because of the way they were putting up fights against teams like Nebraska, like how close they were against Nebraska. So, yeah, I think ever since that Wisconsin win, Maryland just hasn't done much of anything. It's kind of like fool's gold. Like, it looks shiny and it looks fun to play with, but it's worth nothing. Like, it's not doing anything right now. And I'm not necessarily saying that Maryland's a bad team. I'm just saying that, like, Maryland, they're a young team right now. They have a true freshman quarterback. They're one of the few teams in the country that has a true freshman quarterback. More what I'm saying is that this year is not their year. It's not their year this year. We kind of got to see them shine a little bit, yes, but ultimately against older, tougher teams, they're not there yet. They need to take a couple more steps before they get there. All right, so before we preview these college football games that are coming up this weekend and college basketball games that are coming up as well, I have a message from our sponsor. This broadcast is brought to you by Authentic Impact, a Northwest Indiana executive coaching practice working with family businesses to ensure their legacy. When you started your business, you made a promise to do things differently, better than anyone else. Over time, as the business grows, that promise can get diluted or even lost. Penny Schleier at Authentic Impact helps family business owners reignite that promise, weaving it into team engagement, performance, and hiring so your passion becomes the heartbeat of your company again. Learn more at authentic-impact-coaching.com. All right, so let's start off with some of these college football games. Some of these I'm going to go more deeply into than others for time, since we have less than 30 minutes left. But anyway, we're going to start off with college football, then we're going to go into college basketball. I kind of already did some of the college basketball games, but I want to do more of them. Anyways, the fun, I guess, for college football starts Friday, November 14th. We have Minnesota going to Oregon. I think that one could be an interesting game, maybe at the beginning, but I think Oregon should come away with the win there. Minnesota's been kind of a up and down team. Like, they've been really good against bad teams. They've been really bad against bad teams. They've also been really good against good teams, and they've also been really bad against bad teams or good teams. So really, it depends on what Minnesota team we're going to see. but I think Oregon should come away with the win here anyway. Then we've got Clemson, Louisville. I could see maybe Clemson getting the jump on Louisville. Louisville kind of coming off of a bad game against Cal, but Clemson hasn't really looked that great either. So it's really a battle of mid here. Clemson has the opportunity to spoil Louisville's season and give Miami a second chance, because if Louisville loses, that really opens up the door for the Miami Hurricanes. So that game, there's some importance to that game. It's an elimination game for Louisville, but it could also be Miami's second chance. That's pretty much it there. Then we have UCLA versus Ohio State. I think Ohio State dominates them. I don't know by how much, but Ohio State has pretty much covered the spread every single week, except against Purdue last weekend. But, Ohio State hasn't really gone for blowing out teams, really. I mean, they have blown out some teams, but they're not necessarily trying, I guess. It's weird. Ohio State kind of freaks me out. I'm not going to lie. Anyway, I think Ohio State wins that one pretty handily. Then we've got Indiana versus Wisconsin. That's a 11 a.m. Central Time game, 12 noon game Eastern. Wisconsin travels to Bloomington. It's Indiana's last home game before the bye week. I think Indiana should win this one. I am a little worried, though, simply because Wisconsin now has a taste for victory in the Big Ten. So Wisconsin could maybe be dangerous, but the way Indiana played against Penn State, I think even if it's close, I think Indiana wins. I don't think it should be close. But again, Wisconsin has a taste for victory, so now they have confidence built up going into this game. So it could be interesting, but I think Indiana should win pretty handily. Then we've got Texas A&M, South Carolina. South Carolina travels to Texas A&M. I think Texas A&M handles business there. I don't think that game will be an issue for Texas A&M. Then we've got Oklahoma, Alabama. That's at 2:30 Central, 3:30 Eastern. Oklahoma travels to Bryant-Denny. Oklahoma beat Alabama last year, but this is a different Alabama team, but this is also a different Oklahoma team. It'll be a very interesting battle, especially at the quarterback position, because Mateer at one point was a Heisman candidate. Ever since he broke his thumb, though, he hasn't really been the same, but he's been progressively getting back to top form. Question is, are we going to see him in that prime top form against Alabama? I think it's going to be really hard for Oklahoma and John Mateer to stretch the field. Alabama has one of the best passing defenses in the country, so I think Alabama should come out on top here. But don't be surprised if Oklahoma plays spoiler and makes the race for the SEC championship a little bit more interesting. Then we've got Texas, Georgia, another game that could spice up the ACC or the SEC championship race. Texas travels to Athens, and last year Georgia beat Texas twice in pretty bad fashion for Texas. But Texas, I feel like Texas has a newfound confidence. They've strung together some victories. They had a huge home victory against Vandy, and then they had the bye. So I'm curious to see what this Texas team does in Athens. I could see them coming away with the victory. Like, they really impressed me in that game against Vanderbilt. Like, they really did. I was genuinely impressed. And I've been dogging on Texas all year long, because I never thought they should have been the number one team. They lose to Ohio State, play some really crappy games, and then lose to Florida. And I was like, okay, yeah, I was right about Texas. But Texas is now proving me wrong. But in a way, proving me right, because I said they were going to be better at this point of the year. But I had my doubts. I definitely had my doubts. But Texas is, right now, I think, capable of walking into Athens and coming away with the victory. Then we've got Florida Ole Miss. The only reason I bring that one up is because of how last year was. DJ Lagway, for some reason, had a legacy game against Ole Miss last year, and that game is kind of what helped Florida get to a bowl game. It also kept Ole Miss out of the playoffs last year because that was Ole Miss's third loss. But Florida, they benched DJ Lagway. We don't really know what their identity is. They're traveling to Oxford, Mississippi. I just think this Ole Miss team is a lot better than Florida, and I think Ole Miss should come away with the win. Then we've got Notre Dame Pitt. I think this one, high stakes for both teams at 2 losses. This is an out-of-conference game for Pitt, so it's not going to eliminate them from the ACC championship by any means. So Pitt will still have a path to the playoffs, but they still need things to happen for them. Notre Dame, though, they don't have a conference championship. So if they lose this game to Pitt, they're done. Their season is over. Season is over. They have no hope of making it to the playoffs because they would be a 3-loss team. It's just how it is. Notre Dame is traveling to Pittsburgh as well. So this looks like it could be a trap game, but it is a ranked-on-ranked matchup. But if Pittsburgh was not ranked, like they weren't a couple of weeks ago, then I would say it was a trap game. However, we do oftentimes see teams get ranked pretty close to before they play Notre Dame, and then Notre Dame goes and blows them out, and then the committee's like, wow, great job, Notre Dame, you guys did it, and they give them like a participation trophy kind of. I mean, I'm not hating on the teams that they're playing. Like the teams that they're playing, at least like the ones like Navy where they'll get ranked like right before they play Notre Dame, then they get blown out, and then they fall out of the rankings immediately. Like Pitt, it's kind of setting up that way for Pitt. Again, not hating on Notre Dame. They played 2 tough games at the beginning of the year. But I'm just saying, like, weird coincidence that Pittsburgh gets ranked, like, within 2 weeks of playing Notre Dame. I'm not a conspiracy theorist or anything, but, again, I'm just saying. It's right there. Then there's Virginia Duke. I talked about that one a little bit. High stakes for Virginia now being a 2-loss team. Virginia is still in the ACC championship matchup right now, but if they lose to Duke, they're out, and their season will be done. So Virginia needs to win this game. Duke could play spoiler here and beat Virginia. It'll definitely be a wild, wild west game because neither of those teams really take care of the ball all that well. So I'm not even going to call who's going to win because you could literally flip a coin and be able to tell who would win because that is kind of where I think those teams are at right now. I feel like those teams are kind of at par with each other. They're about the same. Ooh, another good one, and this might be the last one that I talk about for college football, just so that way we can get into some college basketball. Maybe a couple more. But Iowa travels to Southern California. They travel to L.A. And I think Iowa, they could beat USC. Both their styles of football are very different. Like Iowa, very physical on the defensive side of the ball. You know, they run it down your throat. Iowa can throw the ball now. Like they've shown that they can throw the ball. They, I think, can throw the ball against USC because their passing defense is not the best, but should be interesting either way. And USC, their style of play is stretch the field, West Coast offense, just points, points, points. Very pretty style of football. But on defense, you know, they're willing to give up points. I could see Iowa upsetting USC here. Granted, it is in Southern California. But I think USC will probably win. I've underestimated USC a lot this year, but they they've impressed me a little bit as well with their passing game. Like, Jaden Mayava he's a great quarterback. Like, he's a really good quarterback, and he has thoroughly impressed me with what he's been able to do. So I'm going to take USC to beat Iowa. I don't know what the spread is off the top of my head, but I'm taking USC. But I'm taking Iowa to cover the points because I don't think Iowa's favored in that game. Okay, now these are for real the last two games I'm going to talk about. So we've got NC State versus Miami. And the reason why I bring this one up is because NC State beat Virginia in a non-conference game, and they beat Georgia Tech a little bit ago. And Miami, they're going to Miami. So NC State, like, they can put up points if they want to. Like, they showed that against Georgia Tech, who is a very physical team. The question is Miami going to be able to hold off NC State, or are they going to have another cristobal crash out? I think NC State could get it done against Miami. After what I saw against Syracuse, though, it's hard for me to not take Miami. So I'm going to take Miami in this game. I think Miami beats NC State. I really like Miami's defense for the most part. Like, their defense has improved from last year. I think Miami will have, this is one of their big opportunities to, kind of bring themselves back into the conversation for the playoffs. They have NC State, then they have Virginia Tech and Pittsburgh at the end of the year. I mean, out of those three games, I think Pittsburgh will probably present the greatest challenge for Miami, but NC State is one where, I have a few question marks. Regarding that game. So that one could be a toss-up. Like, it really could be. I mean, NC State, they have a winning record. They're 5-4, one game away from bowling. Like, this could be NC State's ticket to go bowling and chill the rest of the year. So we'll see. We will see what happens with that. All right, and then the last game I think we should talk about is South Florida versus Navy. Navy coming off of a tough loss to Notre Dame. South Florida coming out of a bye week. It could be very interesting. I mean, it's an in-conference matchup. Both South Florida and Navy right now are in the top of the standings in the American Athletic Conference. So this is, and both of them are one-loss AAC teams. So this is kind of a playoff elimination game in a way because, right now only South Florida is ranked in the AP poll for the American Athletic Conference, but the American Athletic Conference champion, whether they're going to be ranked on the CFP poll or the CFP rankings or not, they're probably going to get that automatic bid into the playoffs. I think it'd be cool if JMU got it, if they won the Sun Belt, just because it would be really cool to see JMU and IU possibly play in a playoff game, just because, Signetti coached at JMU before he came to IU. Like, that would be a pretty interesting game. I think IU would win. Don't get me wrong, but it would just, it'd just be interesting to see on TV and how he would react. But the way South Florida has played for a majority of the year, I think South Florida takes care of business against Navy. I think Navy's going to come into this game pretty worn out after playing Notre Dame. And Notre Dame is a very, very physical team. Like, very physical team. I'm not saying that, like, Navy isn't, but, like, going up against an opponent like Notre Dame and then hosting South Florida, that's tough. That's tough. I think South Florida comes away with the win, though. Like, I really, really like this South Florida team. I like how they can control the pace on offense. Like, if you're not able to slow down their offensive pace, then good luck. Like, you're just going to be hanging around for the ride. So, yeah. I mean, Navy is going to have to establish themselves early, and they're going to need to make sure that they are able to contain and slow down the South Florida offense. Those are the two keys to victory that Navy is going to have. Okay, so now let's get into these college basketball games. So let's start off with Tuesday. We already talked about some of them. We already talked about Louisville, Kentucky, and like Gonzaga and Creighton playing each other. But one of the games that I think that we should talk about as well, it's not a ranked matchup, but both these teams recently have shown that they are pretty good. It's Memphis and Ole Miss. Memphis travels to Ole Miss, and they play at 8 p.m. Central Time. Memphis has kind of built themselves up as a team like that can compete with really any of the big dogs. Last year, their season was a little shaky. I mean, they had a talented roster, but they just could not get it done against the teams they needed to get it done against. Ole Miss, they've been performing really well within the SEC like the past couple of years, and they also really any college basketball team now seems to be just operating within the portal. There's so many dramatic switches that happen with these teams with the portal. I mean, look at Indiana, for example. I mean, it's not even just the portal where they switched. They hired a new coach. They have new assistant coaches now, and they have a whole new roster from the transfer portal, from recruitment. Like, it's literally like a bunch of new faces, like that all just kind of came together at Bloomington and are like, we're a team now, which is interesting. It's very interesting, but it's a lot of shakeup in the college basketball sphere. I think Ole Miss probably comes out with the win. The SEC recently has become really good at basketball. Don't know when they decided to be good at basketball, but apparently they are now, or at least better than where they were. I mean, they weren't bad in the past, but now they're just way better than what they were. They had the most amount of teams in the college basketball playoffs, the March Madness tournament, out of every conference that year. And also just, it was a record. I believe it was 15 teams that were in last year. I mean, that's insane to take basically everyone in your conference except for one team. That is crazy to me. But yeah, I think Ole Miss probably comes with the victory. I mean, home court advantage is huge. I mean, it doesn't necessarily matter where you play, but home court advantage is a huge, huge deal. So I would take Ole Miss there. I mean, it's plain and simple. Okay, kind of moving along a little bit, we now move to Thursday the 13th. Purdue travels to Alabama. It's going to be an interesting game to see what happens because Trey Kaufman-Renn, Purdue's starting center, he was out against Oakland on, I believe it was Friday when they played. It was either Thursday or Friday when they played. But he was out, so it's going to depend whether or not he is going to be healthy, because I think Kaufman-Renn, he's great at the center position, but he also completes that Purdue offense, makes it more dynamic. Like, he's their big guy. So if he's not down in the paint, then there's going to be a lot more pressure on Lawyer and Smith to shoot the ball from the outside and, like, hit every single time. Like, they would have to hit more often than they would, and there's just more pressure on them to do so. But with Kaufman-Renn in the paint, like, there's pressure that's taken off of those guys, like the Purdue shooters, and, they're able to take care of business. They are the number one team in the country, so they are coming into Alabama with a target on their back. Alabama basketball has shown that, like, they are insanely good. Alabama recently, at least with their identity, they ride or die by the three-point line. They ride or die by the three-point line. They shoot like it is nobody's business. Like, you see it in March Madness. Like, they would put up so many points. Like, they put up hundreds, like 100+ points per game if they're on. Like, if they're hot, they just don't miss. And they'll put up 100 or more points against whoever they're playing. Does not matter. The only problem, though, is if they're not hitting their three-point shots, it's a little bit more difficult for Alabama to score normally. So, I mean, we'll see with the roster changes Alabama has made, whether or not they're going to be able to score within the paint and have a more dynamic offense, a more, less one-dimensional offense than what they've had. But, yeah, I think this game being at Alabama, I think will definitely help them for sure. All right, so now moving to Friday, November 14th, we have a old rivalry game that's been kind of reignited. I don't know if you guys remember this conference that's called the Pac-12. The old Pac-12. But, the Pac-12 was a thing a few years ago, and it used to be a Power 5 conference, or at least, made the Power 5 the Power 5. Now it's the Power 4 because the Pac-12 is not. Never mind. Anyway, Arizona goes to UCLA at 9 p.m. Central Time. And the reason why I bring this game up is because Arizona and UCLA was a heated in-conference rivalry because both of those teams normally were pretty dominant in the Pac-12. It was normally either UCLA or Arizona. Both these teams have relatively recent success in March Madness. They both, know how to produce good basketball squads year in and year out. Like, they're normally pretty consistent. Arizona obviously now in the Big 12 and UCLA now in the Big 10. But these teams are right next to each other in their ranking right now. UCLA is ranked 12 and Arizona is ranked 13th. I think Arizona, walks into UCLA and beats them. From what I saw against Florida, what Arizona did against Florida, really, really impressive stuff. I think Arizona, they come out with the victory against UCLA. Like, that squad, just super, super impressive. I mean, seriously, like, this freshman that Arizona has, Koa Pete, like, he's really good. He's super efficient. He's unselfish with the ball. He knows where to put it. He knows who to give it to at the right time. Like, they're really good. Like, Arizona is really good. And I think this squad could maybe win the national championship. All right, with that is all that I have time for today. Time, runs out on us, but it is what it is. It's really starting to heat up in the sports world right now. College football starting to get ready for postseason play, while college basketball, it feels like it's like just getting started. I mean, yeah, there were some ranked matchups early on, but the in-conference play, that's kind of where the parity starts or gets stoked. So we'll see you guys next week. I'm also on Patreon, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon or Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, I post other stuff to the Patreon, like my rankings and like predictions. But yeah, that's all I've got. See you guys next week with more college football and college basketball updates and maybe more. Slide out.